In 1984, 4 heroes were introduced and a global phenomena was born. In 1989, they returned for a supernatural adventure unlike anything they ever witnessed. In 2014, a hero was taken from us. In 2016, a new group was introduced in the hopes of jump-starting a new series of films which never materialized. But in 2021, they returned after a 32-year absence to close out their story and pass the torch to a new generation to carry on the legacy. You know who they are. They are the Ghostbusters.
Throw it! Now!
Now, I have spoken about my love of Ghostbusters so many times in numerous videos on this channel that any further praise would just be redundant. But now, in honor of this once 2-part series of films finally, after 32 years, becoming a trilogy, I would like to devote my time of discussing how the latest installment closes the book on the heroes we have come to know and love for more than 30 years and become a beginning for a new group of heroes that we are going to love and care about just the same. I call this video Ghostbusters Afterlife, an epilogue and prologue. Following the release of Ghostbusters 2 in 1989, rumors and rumblings of a third iteration of Ghostbusters were talked about in the media. But the cast and crew of the original Ghostbusters weren't even interested in making a second movie to begin with. Ghostbusters was never set up to be a movie that would have sequels, but due to the overwhelming popularity of the animated cartoon spin-off, The Real Ghostbusters, Columbia Pictures pressured them into making a follow-up, resulting in a movie that divided the fans and the critics. Part of what contributed to its lackluster reception was due to the film being released a week before the biggest movie of that year, Tim Burton's Batman. In hindsight, they should have released the film at Christmas time, being that the movie is set around Christmas and New Year's, then it wouldn't have been up against stiff competition. There were a couple of script ideas for a third Ghostbusters film, one in which the Ghostbusters actually descended into hell and confronted Satan, who was a Donald Trump-like character. Certain elements, such as the battle with the devil, wound up in the 2009 video game, which became the third and final story in the adventures of the 4 Ghostbusters, bringing the story somewhat full circle. But in 1993, Bill Murray and Harold Ramis had a major falling out, resulting in them not being on speaking terms. As a potential script for a third movie was starting to become a reality, and Bill Murray starting to come around to agreeing to do it, even though he hates doing sequels, it all came to a screeching halt when in 2014 Harold Ramis sadly passed away at the age of 79. The entire world mourned his passing. Following this tragic loss, Sony Pictures announced that a reboot with an all-female cast under the direction of Paul Feig would go into production. This caused an extraordinary amount of controversy amongst the general public, so much so that the trailer for the film received the lowest approval rating on YouTube. Despite mainstream critics giving the film positive notices and being picked at the Nickelodeon's Kid Choice Award as favorite movie, the general public stayed away and it died at the box office. Following the failure of Paul Feig's film, the future of the franchise seemed bleak. It needed a savior. enter Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Reitman, the director of the first Ghostbusters films. Reitman was no stranger to Ghostbusters, having appeared in both films, one of which ended up on the cutting room floor, but actually appearing and having dialogue in the second movie.
You know, my dad says you guys are full of crap.
Jason, well, some people have trouble believing in the paranormal.
No, he just says you guys are full of crap, and that's why you went out of business.
Reitman was already an established independent filmmaker of such films as Thank You for Smoking, and getting nominated for an Academy Award for Juno and Up in the Air. Reitman had no interest in taking on the franchise, feeling it was always something that belonged to his father. But unlike the other previous Ghostbusters stories, which focus on a going into business angle, Ghostbusters Afterlife is more about a family and their connection with one of the original Ghostbusters. Opening in November of 2021 after numerous delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Ghostbusters Afterlife was a big hit, grossing $185 million worldwide on a $75 million budget. Now, when I saw the film, I saw it as a dream come true. Did I expect it to be better than the 1984 film? No. But did it have to be? No, of course not. Some mainstream critics gave the film a negative review because it completely ignored Paul Feig's film and saying the film relied too much on fan service. But what these so-called critics don't understand is that this is what fans wanted to see, especially since the 2016 reboot left a horrible taste in the mouths of the fans. Fans saw Afterlife as a continuation of the continuity of the first two movies. Part of the reason why the 2016 film suffered a great deal was that it completely ignored the events of the first two movies, and it wasn't a continuation. If they made it a continuation with the three surviving Ghostbusters training a new team of Ghostbusters, it might have been salvageable. But they decided to go a different direction, and it severely divided the fans, so Afterlife was just a breath of fresh air. Not only did the film acknowledge the existence of the first two movies, it also allowed a chance for the franchise to continue in some way. Another thing the critics complained about was the constant callbacks to the first movie. Seeing that this is the third cinematic installment to a series of films, it seems somewhat expected that a third film would harken back to a lot of story elements that were shown in the first film. A good number of third installments do that. Not all of them, but some of them. Return of the Jedi, Back to the Future Part 3, and The Dark Knight Rises. Also, the film is saved by not calling it Ghostbusters 3. This was something that happened with the third Godfather, after Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo presented the film as an epilogue to the central story of The Godfather, covered in the first two movies. It was to have an independent title of The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. But Paramount Pictures decided to call it The Godfather Part 3, but by calling it The Godfather Part 3, you would expect the film to pick up exactly where The Godfather 2 ended. But by that point, everyone was much older and a lot of time had passed. And ultimately, the movie suffered because of that. Since this film doesn't pick up immediately after Ghostbusters 2 left off, like your traditional three-part series of films like Back to the Future would do, Ghostbusters Afterlife feels more like an epilogue and a prologue. Seeing that the surviving Ghostbusters that we know and love for so many years have aged considerably and are one man down, it's pretty obvious that they wouldn't be the central focal point of the story. So now we are focused on a single mother and her two children, who happen to be related to Egon Spangler. It allows the young blood that is needed for the franchise to carry on to discover this connection that they have with the original Ghostbusters, and thereby pick up the mantle and continue what the original Ghostbusters started back in 1984. Also, the film allows the surviving Ghostbusters to appear one last time as their iconic characters, almost as a way of saying, it's all right now. The franchise is in good hands. And also to give a proper farewell to their fallen comrade. Like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters Afterlife has the perfect final shot before the credits roll, with Ecto-1 returning back home to New York. It brings the curtain down on the story of Egon, Ray, Peter, and Winston. The torch has now been passed. So what about the future of this franchise? Who knows? Maybe they'll continue with the youngsters. I hope they don't wait too long to make a follow-up. Personally, I would like to see a Ghostbusters movie involving a different branch in a different city or state. Have it set in either Chicago, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, or Stamford, Connecticut. It doesn't necessarily have to be limited to New York City. Make it like a standalone series of films, much like what Star Wars did with Rogue One and Solo, while at the same time make films that continue with the Spengler grandchildren, or make a streaming series like The Mandalorian. I would really like to see a Ghostbusters film set during Christmas time. I'm talking truly set at Christmas, the same way Home Alone is set at Christmas, and have everything that goes with a Christmas movie. I've always said that if they ever made a Ghostbusters movie that was actually set during Christmas, then Krampus would most definitely be the villain. Obviously, he would be different from what Michael Dougherty did in his film. Krampus would obviously be played by an actor. Maybe Christoph Waltz, wearing a makeup similar to what Tim Curry wore in Ridley Scott's Legend. And as a secondary comedic villain, Jack Frost. I'd go see that. So in closing, Ghostbusters Afterlife should be seen as both the closing of the book on one team of heroes and opening the first page on a new group of heroes who the audience will love just as much as the originals. It respects the past and makes us hopeful for the future of this franchise. Thanks to Ghostbusters Afterlife's financial success, here's hoping the future will continue to look bright. And it's all thanks to Jason Reitman. Jason, I salute you.